if you do the work, something's going to happen. If you keep pushing, you will get there. I do believe that now. I've seen so many people come from nothing to something. I've seen all my buddies like climb and fall and then climb again. Like, you just have to keep going, and you learn that perseverance from training, from putting yourself in hard positions and knowing, okay, this sucks, but I can get out of it. This sucks. I know I'm not good now, but I will get good. You start as a white belt, you get to your black belt, and then you get to black belt and you realize there's way better black belts, and you're like, okay, so what does that do? You kind of start over again. And that's what life is, right? You get to a certain level of success and you're like, oh man. And then you see, oh my God, there's these guys that are even higher than me. And it's like, that it doesn't stop, and you don't get complacent because there's always something to learn. Having that white belt mentality, I think, is so good. And, you become a dad, then it's like, oh man, I got a lot to learn. I don't know everything. So then you want to learn more about that. You want to be the best of that. I think the pursuit of excellence that you learn from martial arts applies to everything if you choose to.
Brother Eddie, thank you so much for taking the time. I've been watching you for months and months of all the cool stuff you're doing through boxing. And I know we really both share that enthusiasm for using boxing and martial arts as a tool for personal development.
Exactly. Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Eddie, can we maybe start a little bit with your background and how you came to own the gym you have? Because I'm going to tell you, before jiu-jitsu, boxing was my big passion. And
yeah,
coaches that I knew from Chicago, from the Chicago scene, like a lot of them were kind of down on their luck. They didn't really have, none of them had their own gyms. They were all kind of always like struggling to make a paycheck. A lot of them have, their body, a lot of them were older too. And, their joints are messed up from years of holding pads. And they're these grizzled boxing trainers. And here you are in LA, this good looking, suave, relatively young guy, but you've been doing this a long time. And I got to be honest, I look at some of your training videos and I'm a little sad that I didn't have you as my So that's a great job I think you're doing.
Well, I appreciate it, man. It means a lot. Yeah, I started in martial arts when I was very young. So I did karate. It was like traditional Okinawan karate. It was full contact. This was, early 80s, early 90s, late 80s, where, karate was still karate. This is before, the point system took over and they stopped sparring. This is when kids still sparred and we did full contact, and there was a lot of discipline. We trained hard, and, I continued to train and kind of left it in my early teen years because I was playing sports at a high level. I was playing soccer at a very high level. I was playing football at a very high level. So it just, karate at that time, it was like, unless you were a Power Ranger, it wasn't really a future in it. This is before the UFC and everything else. So I got really into sports, and I moved to New York early 2000s, probably like 2002. And I found a boxing gym there, and I fell in love with boxing. And I trained when I was a kid, but I didn't really train. And when I was in New York, New York is the boxing town. It was, it's like the old school gyms and stuff like that. And I got really into it. And as I started really like learning and studying boxing, I realized how much I liked coaching. So I'd watch fights, and the fights were really good, but I was more focused in the minute in between to hear what the coaches were talking about. I love seeing the strategy. I love seeing how much work it's, because my other favorite sport growing up was race car driving. And, people think race car driving is just the driver. It's like, no, every part of the team is so important. If one person makes a mistake, it makes or breaks, milliseconds, which would get you to lose. Or if someone makes a mistake, someone can get killed. And boxing is the same thing. You have everyone on that team, everyone in the preparation has a very important part. And if one person doesn't do their job, it could cost them a loss or for them to get hurt. So it made me really love the philosophy of boxing from the coach's side. Like, these guys are taking people from, lumps of clay, and they're turning them into these, weapons. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these coaches, they develop these kids from a very young age. So they put a lot of effort into the warriors they become. It doesn't happen overnight. People think that these fighters it's all talent. It's like, no, there's a lot of years put in by other people that believe in these kids, and they're turned into these fighters. So that's kind of where I found that passion. And as I continued to train, I started coaching at a very young age. And I had good coaches and I had really bad coaches. And through the bad coaches is where I realized what type of coach I wanted to be. That's kind of how it happened.
That's awesome. It just reminded me of that old boxing phrase. It takes 10 years to develop a good 10-round fighter.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's and it's so interesting. Even this is why I love these kind of conversations, because I never thought about it like that. You see a great champion go out and have a great performance. Even me being in the world for so long, I forget that it was a whole team that got him there. And it's
Yeah.
just to look at them like, oh yeah, he killed it. But without the right, maybe the right partner at home, the right coach, the right training atmosphere, he wouldn't be where he was.
It's everything. It's your training partners, it's your coaching, your team, and the people you have around you. You know, I've seen guys ruin their guys that I knew personally that ruined their careers because the friends they had around or because of the partner they had. You know, if their boyfriend or the girlfriend or the wife, isn't the right match, if they stress you out and they distract you, you have to be on your game all the time. Same with the friends you have, same with the coach you have. If you have a coach that isn't honest and a coach that becomes more of a yes man and just lets you get away with whatever you want, you need a guy that you trust because you're putting your life on the line. So if you can't trust what he says, or if he's just there to get paid, you see this happen a lot. These coaches are putting these guys in because they want to get a paycheck, but they don't really care about the guys. And I respect the coaches that care about their guys and really want to see them succeed and protect them.
Yeah.
It's at the end of the day, it's your responsibility, especially when you're dealing with, amateurs and youth guys. Like your first priority is their safety. So if you don't feel that they're ready to go, that's on you. It doesn't matter what your ego says. If you want them to do this fight or you want them to win this championship, great. But if they're not prepared, it's your responsibility to put your ego aside and go, look, their safety comes first.
That idea of having a good team around you. I remember when Conor McGregor was kind of at his peak, and
Yeah.
he just had this. I always looked up to people like I loved the heavyweight Fedor because he didn't say anything. He looked like he was like and then to go out and knock somebody out or submit them. I like the more humble champion. So personally, I didn't love McGregor's whole thing. And then there was definitely a part of me where he was just going on and on. When he was at the peak, he was just so obnoxious, and he was performing great too. And then you see like all the stuff he's going through now, like the last few days, like he's like out with some other lady who's like not the best looking, and everyone's like, you got a wife and 4 kids, like what are you doing? And they're already talking about it. And now I feel guilty that I even had the idea of like, I want to see this great man fail. Indonesia. But like I feel so sorry for him now. And I'm just like, oh man, it's only going to get worse. Like if he's in his early 30s or mid 30s and he's going through this, what's it going to be like when he gets even older and he doesn't have the spotlight on him anymore? And he's just, I don't know.
When no one cares.
Yeah, when no one cares. So then you're going to do more self-destructive behavior. So, man, it's so sad. And then it's so crazy, the similarities between him, double champ at 28 and 4 months, and then Ilya now, who's 28 and 4 months, and he just won his second title. But he seems like he has a better, very close-knit circle. He seems like he'll be okay. But let's see in 10 years if he can.
We don't know because people see Conor now, but see, I'm the opposite. I love the guys that are confident enough to say, because look, Ilya is just as arrogant as confident. He threw a victory party before he won. I love those guys. Like growing up, my favorite athlete was Michael Jordan because he had an arrogance to him, but it wasn't because he self-proclaimed that he was the best. He outworked everybody. If you remember like Conor on the way up, yeah, he was talking a lot of shit, but that guy was also training nonstop. He was doing things physically that other guys weren't doing. His technique he's doing stuff that nobody was doing at that time. Now guys are all moving, they're slick, they're whipping kicks, they're boxing. Like he was doing strikes, he was doing movements. He started doing animal movement and understood that the body has to be functional. Like he wasn't doing like regular training. He was obsessed with the sport. Yeah, he talked a lot of shit, but he was backing it up. And that's because he was always training. Like he would talk about it all the time. He's like, you guys, you're talking about this and that. He goes, I'm seeing patterns and sequences in my head. He's obsessive. That's why he was so successful. The problem is his coach said this after he won the second title. He's like, you know what? I think we should retire. And he's like, why? He's like, because you did everything you wanted to do. He's like, you're not going to be focused anymore. And his coach knew that. And they went and did the Mayweather thing. That was pretty incredible too. The fact that he did as well as he did on his first fight, a 12-round fight against arguably one of the greatest fighters of this generation. He was landing punches. He was doing, look, people could say whatever they want, but he was doing things at a high level, and he's never boxed before. Yeah. Like this isn't some random guy. This is Floyd Mayweather. And yeah, Floyd maybe wanted to drag him to the late rounds, but he still got caught with shots. And that's not easy to do. To have the confidence to put your hands down in front of Floyd Mayweather, that's not nothing. So like his level was very high, but his coach was absolutely right that he knew that once he got to a certain point, there was nothing to keep him grounded anymore. And, he did the Khabib fight, but even then, like he wasn't training, he was probably partying, he was like just he was sparring every day. He wasn't really like focused. He came in angry for that fight, and he still did better than anyone else against Khabib. You know, like he was able to stop a lot of his wrestling. He was able to do things that no other guy was able to do, and that was after 2 years off, and you know the partying and losing to Mayweather and all the other stuff. So like it's interesting. We'll never know what he could have done because remember he also got COVID. So he was in the time where COVID shut everything down and he was hyper focused and then they basically shelved him for 2 years. And somebody like that, that's such a high obsessive personality, if he doesn't have something to focus on, he's going to get into trouble and he knows that. So, you know, it's different with Ilya because he's in a different time and he can stay focused right now because he's not getting put on hiatus for 2 years. So we'll see. He also is just now getting into superstardom. The other thing that people don't realize about Conor, there has never been a fighter in the UFC with his level of superstardom.
Yeah.
Nobody. You know, Ronda was the closest. Before Ronda, there was no female MMA fighters that were champions in the UFC. She's the reason why there is a UFC female division. And Conor, you know, guys were wearing tap out shirts and flip flops to press conferences before Conor. He's the one that made it a prize fighting sport. Before it was like we watched UFC,
Right.
you know, fans, but now everyone watches the UFC because of Conor McGregor. You know, he brought it up to where guys are wearing suits, they're doing this. He cleaned up the sport. Remember, guys used to be in t-shirts at press conferences. Now these guys are wearing suits. They have these big pressers. They have these things that he elevated the sport to a new level. And I think we forget that sometimes because yeah, he's getting into shenanigans now, but it's that type of mentality, you know, it drives you crazy. If you don't have a target, you start target becomes you, and I think he's self-destructing a little bit. So I'm curious to see if he's able. Remember, Tyson had something like this, and the same thing. Tyson was like a superstar. He was nothing like him had been seen at the time, and he spiraled inward. And then later in his life, now that he's an older guy, now he's having this like reemergence, and he's all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, but he had to do a lot of soul searching, and he's very honest about how he collapsed. And John Jones is kind of having a similar thing. We don't really know what's going to happen with him. He's just been able to compete this whole time, which is crazy. You know,
That's so true. You know, you're mentoring a lot of these young guys that come in your gym and you're using martial arts as a vehicle to better them. But it's just the three cases. Well, Ilya's unproven, but John and Conor, they're great examples. It's like you want these great things, but even if through hard work, you become a superstar and your legacy will be remembered forever. It's still, your life can be very difficult afterwards. It doesn't make life easy. There really is nothing that makes your life easy, you know?
well, it's the journey, right? I was talking to one of my students today. I told him to read The Alchemist. Have you read The Alchemist? So Alchemist, right? The treasure was there the whole time. It wasn't about the treasure itself. It was the journey of becoming that person. If you don't go through the journey, then you could get what you want, but you're not going to know how to handle it. And there's so many stories, you know, in history that tell you that. It's like if you get what you want too early, you can't handle it. And if you go through the hard stuff, if you hit rock bottom, you don't have to, hopefully you don't have to hit this rock bottom as some of these guys are, but having that struggle, having that journey, you become the person that's worthy of what you actually want. But if you get something too fast, then you can't handle it. And, you know, I've experienced that in my life. And I think a lot of my young guys are kind of experienced that. You kind of have to let them make some mistakes so that they become the person worthy of the goals that they're reaching. If they get there too fast, then they spiral out of control. And a lot of these guys, you know, John Jones was 20 years old when he won the title, right? He was the youngest. Like, imagine being considered the baddest dude on the planet at that age. It happened to Tyson as well. That does something to your psyche. You know, like you see these other guys that are humble. Well, yeah, they had a lot of life experience. Like Daniel Cormier had a lot of life experience before he became champion. That's why he's so like well-rounded mentally, I think. You know, he called out all the stuff that John did a lot of times before he even did it. He just kind of saw it, you know, and it's like I don't think that there's just that John's a bad guy. I just think that he has something that he has these demons inside him that he has to deal with, and until he's forced to deal with it, he's going to keep messing up. And there's a lot of guys like that. You know, you have to go through that hero's journey to figure out if you're going to become the best version of yourself or you're not. Some guys don't. I forgot the saying, but it's like hell is meeting the person you could have become, and heaven is becoming the person you're meant to be, right? And that's like the what people believe.
That's so true. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves, I guess, Eddie, is people that have never done anything athletic in their life talking about, you know, these great championship fights like they have an idea what it's like. And what you just said is perfect, because I've never really thought about it like that too. But both, Mike Tyson was 20 and John Jones are right around the same age. You're 5 years away from your brain being fully formed. No, none of us on the outside can possibly imagine what it must be like, for when Tyson won the heavyweight championship back then. He's got Don King and all these people, and he's like, you're the best ever. He's 20 years old. He's baby. It's just
Yeah, and I say this a lot. I respect people in the community, the announcers. There's some announcers that I really, admire. I like their passion, the way they describe the sport. But some of these guys, they criticize so harshly on these fighters and these athletes, and I'm like, you've never done anything. You've never competed at any level. And I'm not saying you have to be a pro fighter. I'm saying you have to have competed in some capacity, because you wouldn't have those opinions and you wouldn't be so harsh on people personally, because you understand people are going to make mistakes. Like, none of us are perfect. I'm far from perfect. And I know I've made lots of mistakes. I'm going to continue to make mistakes. But the whole point of making mistakes is that you get better and you grow from them. But if you're destroyed every time that you make an error and you're publicly chastised, well, you're not going to grow. You're just going to double down on whatever it is that you were doing, because you're like, well, everyone hates me anyway. I might as well, just live in the villain. And it's like, you got to give people a chance for redemption, because that's the whole point, right? The whole point is to better yourself and to learn from your mistakes. But if you have to be perfect all the time, I think that's even happened in the sports. Like boxing, the best boxers had all lost. But now these guys are so obsessed with their O that they're not willing to take risks. They're not willing to challenge themselves. They're not willing to take real fights. You have all these young like stars right now. None of them have fought each other in boxing. Back in the day, these guys would have all fought already. You look at like the last era, I think, of guys like that was like Oscar and Shane Mosley. Those guys, when they were in their 20s, they were all fighting all the time. These guys all fought each other. These young guys now, they'll be 30 years old and they didn't fight any of the prospects in their division. And it's insane, because everyone's scared of losing. Everyone's scared of the ridicule. And it's because the online, the keyboard warriors, they come out and they, you lose one fight or you have one bad fight. They're like, oh, he's washed up. He's washed up. It's like, no, you might have a bad night. Look at how many bad nights Pacquiao's had. He's about to go for a title again at 45. That's insane. But he's kind of a throwback fighter. He has that mindset of he doesn't care. He lost, okay, he comes back and wins again. Like he doesn't let it destroy him like some of these guys do. And I think it's because you're right. It's because of the people that criticize that have never done it or have never been there, and they're so harsh. Not everyone can handle it.
I just heard Rampage talking about that. He said when he was fighting in Japan and he'd lose a fight, there was a lot less social media then anyway, and there was almost no chatter of it because only the hardcore fans are watching the Pride events. And he's kind of talking about the same thing you're saying about now, the amount of pressure on these athletes with social media and ridicule. And, like when poor Tony Ferguson got knocked out by Chandler and there was that meme of his face distorted. Anyone's pulling up Instagram, they don't watch the fights, they'll see that meme, it's going to be so tough.
And look, and we're all guilty of it because we watch it.
Yeah.
We'll watch the knockout 1,000 times and be like, man, that sucks. And we'll repost it and we'll do this. And it's like, we're all a part of it, whether we like it or not. I'm not a fan of bashing athletes ever, even if they make a mistake. Like, look, you're not in his position or her position. We don't know what's going on in their mind. Like we all have bad days. We all have personal problems. And when everyone, bashes these people that are putting themselves on the line, that are taking risks, that are putting themselves out there, like every time that you put yourself out there, even us, like we have these discussions or we will post things to try to help people. Sometimes we try to inspire people. Those get met with critique. You'll have people that'll put us down or say that, who are you to say this or who are that? It's like, no, anytime you step outside the box and try to do something, you're always going to be up for critique or for, worse. And people can say horrible things about you. But, you have to just develop that mindset of like, there's always going to be people that don't like what you do. You just have to focus on the people that do like what you do and the people that care. You're always going to have bad people in your life, but you're also going to have people that love and support you. And you just have to put your energy there. And, now, even at the amateur level, like some of my amateur athletes, they're already, they have to focus on their persona and their social media and how to sell fights, how to market themselves. Like that's the business. You have guys like Jake Paul who are making millions of dollars with, a very small, short career, but it's because he mastered that other side of the business. And look, people could say what they want, but he figured that side out. He figured out the business side. He figured how to sell fights. That is part of the sport. It's a show business. So yeah, you have to train. You have to learn how to fight. He kind of did it backwards, and now he's learning how to fight on the after fight. But it's working for him, So you can't get mad because he's also putting other people on, oh, excuse me, he's also giving opportunity to a lot of people that probably wouldn't have gotten the chance. So, whether or not it's genuine or whether or not he's doing it to help himself, doesn't matter, because people can take advantage and they can use that to put themselves up as well. So, it's a lot different now. The guys have to kind of be good at everything, and they have to deal with the ridicule of social media, which is, it's anonymous. And that, anyone that could say things anonymously, it's a shitty place because you can't even defend yourself, you
So
know?
that thing you said is so interesting about Daniel Cormier having all these other life experiences and just being older and a bit more wiser. So it was so much easier for him to handle it. And he seems like he's made the transition as good as anyone from retiring, still being
Yeah.
involved.
He's at peace.
Yes, he seems like
And you don't see that a lot because he retired on his terms. And I think a lot of guys are forced to retire
Mhm.
and they don't plan ahead. They don't have other things. Like, he loves coaching. He's great at commentating. He has podcasts. Like, he's at peace with what he's done. And at least I don't know him personally. I'm guessing this, it seems to me that he's at peace, and he's content. He's happy with what he's doing now. I think a lot of guys are forced to do it, and they haven't really stopped at any moment to really do work with themselves, and they have to face themselves. And I think a lot of men deal with that when they get to a certain point where it's like you've gotten away with being this character for so long, and then when you have to look at yourself, it's a really rough experience, and not everyone's equipped for it. Some people are not ready to go within and to change things, to move to the next phase of their life.
so Eddie, as a coach, when you're with these young fighters and you know that their brain's not even fully formed, do you think you can explain some of these lessons from as being an older, wiser man? Do you think you can get through to them? I mean, I'm sure there's certain things that we just have to learn through, mistakes
Sure.
years go by. But is that one of your roles, like with you young fighters, is try to help?
It is, because look, the goal for me is not necessarily for them to all be fighters. My goal is for them to be well balanced young men, right? I think our generation was very much, men don't cry, we don't show emotion, be tough, just power through everything. This generation has been overcorrected, where it's like, show whatever emotion you want, all is permitted. You don't have to be tough, you don't have to do this. I think there's a balanced, centered masculinity that we have to teach these young boys, where it's like, look, it's okay to have emotions and to feel things, but there's a time and place. There's also a time and place where you just got to lock it in and you got to get stuff done, and you can't fall apart, because this is what being a man is handling things even when you're not having a good day. That doesn't mean that when you get home you can't talk to someone, or you can't call your coach, or you can't go to therapy. Like, we weren't allowed to go to therapy. That was like a sign of weakness. Like, all of these things are okay. There needs to be a balance. And I think if we use the tools that we have and explain it to these young men in a way that they can understand, they can benefit and not make the same mistakes we did. I just think for us, really, it just wasn't available. Like, I never heard of any of this stuff when I was young. No men talk like that. Like, they didn't have conversations about mental health or doing self work or meditation or therapy. Like, that was all considered like a weakness, or just like there was something wrong with you if you had therapy. And a lot of guys just wouldn't do it. And I think our generation, a lot of these guys that did do the work, see the benefits of it. And now if we can raise our young boys to understand that there's nothing wrong with it, I think we can get through to them. But not all of them are going to be susceptible. Some of them are going to think it's stupid and they're not going to want to talk. And maybe when they get older, they will. But some of them are just going to have to learn the hard way. But the ones that you can reach, you just do your best to get there.
I remember all the years of when I was up until 35 when I had my last professional MMA fight. I don't, I'm sure there must have been in passing, but I don't remember one of my coaches talking to me about, facing fear or overcoming self-doubt or negative thoughts or all the like the mental game that people talk about now. And I don't think I was particularly athletic as a kid. And I think that I pretty much fulfilled my potential with martial arts. I'm very satisfied with what I did, considering I don't think I had the greatest attributes. But I think, if anything, I even outperformed myself physically. But there was so much work I could have done with my mind, and I'm a smart guy, and I wish I just had a bit more
Applied.
motivation to go down that rabbit hole. So I think it's
So listen, I had the same experience, which is why I became a coach. I always said, like, I want to be the coach that I wish I had, because there was a lot of stuff, mentally that I struggled with. And now, in my 40s, I feel like I perform better than I did back then because I was able to do all these things. And I think the other issue that we have, two things you said. One, the The not being taught. I think the problem is we have too many coaches and not enough teachers. You look at the old coaches, they were all teachers. They weren't trainers, they were teachers. These guys taught things. It started with this. You listen to Custamato, and he said it's 80% mental. And it's 100% correct. Yeah, conditioning, technique, all that's very important. But if you don't have the right mindset, it doesn't matter. You have to have your mind in the correct place. And if you have a winning mentality, you look at the best fighters, the best athletes, they're not necessarily the most gifted. They have the best mindset. Michael Jordan, best mindset. Cena, race car driver, best mindset. Brady wasn't the best athlete, best quarterback. Why? Because of his mindset. He refuses to lose. Every time that you have somebody that's special, it's a mentality. You know, like Cobrinha is a good friend of mine. He's crazy.
Yeah.
His mindset is like no one I've ever seen in my life. Not everyone can handle training with him. He has a mindset. Physically, yeah, he's strong, but he's not the strongest. You know, the reason why he's so good is because he refuses. There is not a seed of doubt in his mind ever. He always knows what's going to happen, and there's no quit in him. You know, that's a mindset thing. That's something you can develop, that you can train. With my boys, my girls, the fighters, we do so much mental preparation. I make them visualize every aspect of what's going to happen, from entering to the way you wrap your hands, to the crowd, to where we're going to fight, to what they're going to feel, things that could go wrong, things that can go right, and then how to weather it and get through it. Because if you let it suffer, it's like, what did Customado say? It's like fear is a tool, right? It could light your house or it could burn it down. So it's like it could feed you, it could cook your food, or it could burn your hand. You know, you choose what it does. Fear's a tool. So it can make you better or it can tear you apart. But you have to learn how to maneuver and manipulate the fear to use to benefit you. And I think that's the trick, but that's all mental.
Mm.
You know what I mean? The physical stuff you can teach.
You just brought back a memory, Eddie. I remember when I was trying to get really good cardio, and my boxing coach at the time, you know, there'll be however many of us training, 10, 12 or something, and there'd always be two in the ring sparring, and then there'd be a couple on the bag, maybe one on the pads, you know, everyone's in positions. And he would basically keep us in the ring as long as we wanted to spar. So whether I did 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 5 rounds. And I remember there'd be so many times where I'd have always the most competitive rounds first, and then I was like wiped. And then he's like, "Oh, do you want to stay in?" And every ounce of me wanted to say no, but I would just say, "Yep." And I'd pretend to him that I was in good shape. And he would start to say, "Lawrence, this never gets tired." And then it became a thing, my cardio, but it was all self-manufactured for me.
Yeah.
Those really dark places. So it's so cool that we do have the ability to do that. But I just wish, like you said, the fact that all these things you're doing, you're having them visualize things and imagining winning and going through the process in your mind before you get there. I feel like when I look back to all my fights, except for the last MMA fight where I knew it was going to be the last time I do this, and I said, I'm going to actually enjoy the experience. I feel like I can actually remember vividly everything leading up to the weigh-ins and the fight, and luckily it went well, and the post-fight. But all the others was this blur of just anxiety and all this energy. I was kind of waiting to go. And I'm so upset that I didn't just take more of a time, you know, a step back so I can actually enjoy the emotions, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's you were surviving during those fights instead of being present, right? You just got through it.
Yeah.
And the goal is to see it so many times in your mind that you've seen it 1,000 times. You know, you listen to Poirier and Connor, they were exactly the same, where they saw it in their head so many times. They saw the 2 belts in their head so many times. There was the video, you know, when Connor won the belt, he goes, "Where's my other belt?" And he was pissed because he needed to see it.
Oh, yeah.
He needed to have it because he saw it in his head so many times. And you see him looking at himself. He's like, "That's exactly what I saw in my head." Like, he saw it so many times that he made it happen. He would visualize, you know, driving his beat up car, and he visualized having a Porsche emblem. He visualized having, you know, I did that with my gym. Before I had my gym, I ordered hoodies with my logo that I made, and I manifested exactly what the gym was going to look like. And I would go out wearing my hoodie before I was still working at a different gym. And I would say, "Yeah, this is my gym. I have it. It's going to be in this area. That's a building right now." I saw it. I didn't even know where it was going to be at, but I saw it in my head. You know, I saw myself training the way that we train at the gym. I saw exactly what I was going to do, and I saw it in my head until it happened. Whatever competitions I won in my head, I always saw my hand raised. And I tell my guys too, I was like, don't think about how it's going to happen. Just see it. Just see your hand raised. Just see the victory. See yourself wearing the belt. Don't worry about the how. The training comes in camp. We do training in the gym, we do the work in the gym, and then just visualize your hand raise. I don't care about how, that's my job to figure out as your coach. You know, as we get to the fight, I'll give you directions in between rounds. You just focus on training and visualizing. Don't think about how it's going to happen. That'll happen with instinct and reflexes and your training. But you know, when you start stressing out how am I going to do this, or how am I going to beat this guy, or he's stronger, or he's faster, don't worry about it. You know, focus on what you can do, and then you respond to what they do. The other thing you mentioned too about not being the most athletic, for me personally, those are the guys I want. I don't want the athletic, talented kids. Most of the kids I train, even most of the girls I train, they're ex-chubby kids. They're ex-unathletic kids. They're the ones that nobody wanted to train. And I build them into something. And those guys work twice as hard as the talented ones, because the talented ones get lazy and they rely on their speed and their athleticism and their talent. Everyone tells them they have so much potential, so then they don't want to work hard. But the ones that they tell they can't do it, they're going to work twice as hard, and they're going to always feel like they're not doing enough. And those are the kids you want. You want the kids that you have to say, hey, that's enough today. You don't want to have to ask, hey, did you train today? Hey, did you run today? I don't want to chase you down. I want the kid that I have to tell to slow down a little bit.
I absolutely love that. Eddie, you just reminded me of a story. I know you're very fond of talking about martial arts and boxing as a rite of passage. And I was just reminded, when I first moved to the US, I got sent by my trading company in London, and I was trading at the Chicago Board of Trade. I was the youngest guy in the pit. I was early 20s. Everyone else was probably mid 30s average age. And everybody hated because they hated my company, and my company would basically trade against the pit. And the pit is an old boys club, so they just hated me. So every day I had to stand in this tiny environment with 50 American guys that all hated my guts and just talk shit about me all day. And I just, I didn't even know what to do. I'm working for my company. I'm trying to pay the bills. Like, I'm a young guy. And then I do the Chicago Golden Gloves, and there was a lady there that just saw me, and she's like, you don't really look like the typical boxer. And I started talking to her. She's like, oh, if you're from England, you've got this great story. So she did an article about me in the Chicago Tribune. So the next day, one of the old brokers in the pit, he saw the article, and he's like, Lawrence, is this you? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I think I just like won a fight or won 2 fights or something. So it was like a good article. And he's like, from now on, you're my guy. And ever since then, everyone in the pit respected me. And eventually I left the company, and they were all like, listen, I hope they all come up to me and say, listen, it's not personal. We never hated you. We just hated the company, and you were kind of what they represent. But I really think if it wasn't for my boxing, I don't know if I could have got through that environment, because it was long. It was like 18 months of every single day, there's people talking shit about you every single time in your mouth. And like, you're already an outsider with that group anyway.
Yeah.
Just think, but now looking back, I'm like, that was a very formative time in my life. And I'm so grateful that I went through that and I had that rite of passage.
Yeah.
And just so few kids, I feel like they just don't really have anything like that, right? They're just kind of aimless, and the years are going by, and they're not really doing much in life. And that's why every negative metric, from depression, obesity, all the, addiction, like all of these are on the rise, just because these young people just don't have the beautiful thing that we found through much.
I mean, they're not even going outside. A lot of these kids, like for us, a punishment was coming inside. For them, a punishment is making them go outside. When we were kids, the mom's like, you got to come in. We're like, no, these kids, it's like, you got to go outside. They're like, no, we want to play video games. Like, their punishment is to go outside. Our punishment was to come in, and we were constantly getting hurt. I said this to one of my moms at the gym the other day, and I was like, hey, when's the last time you saw a kid with a cast?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh my God. Like, when we were young, every other kid had a cast. When we were in school, there was at least 1 or 2 kids with a broken arm all the time. I can't remember the last time I seen a kid with a broken arm. You just don't see them, because kids aren't climbing trees. They're not trying stuff. They're not exploring. They're not doing things. And especially boys, girls, I think, can focus a little bit more at a young age. And I think their development's a little bit different than ours. But boys need to be running around. They need to be exploring. They need to be trying stuff. They need to be climbing. They need to be like figuring out their bodies, and they can't sit still for that long because it's not good for them. And then what happens is, they can't sit still, and then the teacher wants to say they have ADD or they have this, and then they put them on medication, and then they get addicted to that. It's like this cycle of unhealthy patterns that we've developed over the last 20 years. And, they need to just go back to a little bit more traditional stuff with young boys, just being physical. Being physical calms us down, especially at that age. I didn't know what testosterone was when I was a kid. Now I understand. I had very high levels of testosterone when I was young, and that's why I was like this all the time. But I just, teachers would be like, he just has too much energy. Energy is a gift. If you have energy, that's great. That means you can get a lot done. But if you try to get a little kid to sit still, healthy child is going to be able to do that, especially a young boy. They need to be doing things all the time. They need to figure stuff out. They need to be building things. They need to be playing. They need to be climbing. Like, let them do that at those formative years because they need to figure out how to do it all. And if you don't, then they think there's something wrong with them, and then they're scared to just be themselves. And it's like you said, sports is the best way to figure that out because they can get all that stuff out. And the other thing I get into arguments with some of these school boards that I talk to is they think that boxing and martial arts is going to make them violent. And it's the complete opposite. It's
Yes.
the complete opposite. The kids that train all the time never get into fights. Never get into fights because they don't have anything to prove. The kids that don't, it comes from an insecurity. It comes from them not knowing what to do with that energy. If they're getting that energy out twice, 2 or 3 times a week, they're fine. They don't have that. They're calmer. And I've seen it with my boys. I have so many stories of my boys training for 2, 3 years, and then the same kid that used to bully them comes back and they have an opportunity to kick the kid's ass, and they go, I didn't do it. I'm like, why? He's like, I have nothing to prove now.
Mhm.
And most people would be like, well, why didn't you get revenge? And they're like, I just didn't need to. He's like, I know what I can do now. He's like, I feel sorry for him. That's growth. That's power. Knowing that at a young age, you're 15 years old and you can beat up your former bully and you choose not to because you take the high road. That's what it teaches you, having that power and that control of that power. But, these other kids don't do that. And that's why they shoot up schools and they hit girls and they do things like that because they don't have control of that energy they have inside. So I think it's important for them to learn, and it's important for them to be challenged and to lose. Jujitsu it doesn't matter who you are, jujitsu is going to humble you. It doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how long you've been training. There's always going to be somebody that can humble you. So you have to go in ready to learn, ready to work hard, ready to make mistakes, and then start again. That's what I love about jiu-jitsu is you can start again. Somebody beats you, okay, slap hands and we go again. Try to fix your mistakes. But in life, you don't always get to do that. And if you freak out every time that something goes wrong, you're going to have a lot of problems, and you're going to be upset all the time. You're going to get depressed, or you might rage and do something stupid. That's kind of the lessons that we learn that a lot of people don't because they never put themselves in uncomfortable situations.
Mhm. Um, it's just like those people that say they have really bad dogs, and normally the dogs just don't get enough exercise. And
Yeah.
we're so simple. Even now, my 46 years old, I still know if I get a good workout in, I'm generally going to be happy for the rest of the day. And if for whatever reason I get
Yeah.
annoying work stuff and I miss my workout, I'll probably be grumpy all day and snap on my wife and that's me now. Actually, if I was young, you just got to burn off that energy. But yeah, I'm going to ask you. So now I've got a 4.5-year-old, and I'm trying to you start thinking about the lessons I want to teach him as he gets older. And one of them is, of course, you want him to not be, you want him to be strong and be able to defend people that are getting bullied. Maybe if he's around a bullying somebody, you'd want him to step up, right? Every father would love that. And then I read this story about some kid that stopped another kid bullying, and he got jumped by, like, I don't know, 15 kids, and they basically beat him up so much he died. And I remember I just saw that maybe 6 months ago, and I thought, Jesus, like, I've got to be careful with my son. Like, I want to teach him to be this noble guy. But these schools are crazy. I don't know where the school was, but you read those stories and it's like, man, it's a scary world out there for someone raising a young boy.
Yeah. For so many different reasons too. He could get labeled the bad guy for jumping in, for defending someone. It's like it's lose-lose sometimes. What I teach my boys, so my Samuel's 7 now, and the little one Henry's 4. So they're both in jiu-jitsu. Samuel's been training jiu-jitsu since he was 4. And I had my first bully experience at the park when they were playing. And there was a kid bigger than him that was running around with this like metal bike, and he was almost hitting the other kids. And the parents were kind of just not paying attention, and no one was saying anything. So at one point he started bothering the little kid on the swing next to him. And Samuel looked at me, and I kind of just gave him the nod. I was like, your brother's over there. So he like ran over and he told the kid, he goes, hey, stop bothering kids. And the kid's like, well, what are you going to do? And the kid's bigger. He's like, I know jujitsu. He goes, I'm not going to say it again. Stop bothering kids. And I looked at the parents, and they didn't say anything. So the kids lock hands and they start kind of wrestling. And Samuel takes the kid down right away and starts controlling him. And then the parents start screaming. I get him like, hey, like pretended to be upset. And I was like, good boy. And, Samuel was just upset about the kid bothering other kids. After that, he was kind of just pacing, staring at the kid because they moved him to the other side of the park. And I was like, okay, it's done, bud. Like, let it go. He's like, someone could have gotten hurt. He's like, he was being really irresponsible. I was like, I know, bud. I was like, now you got to let it go. He goes, okay. And he just stopped. But what I loved is that his focus was about protecting the other kids. That's all he cared about. And he knew that it was just one on one and he could handle it. And he didn't, the only reason he stepped in is because that kid couldn't defend himself. There was no ego for him. It was that kid he was bullying was smaller than him and he couldn't do anything about it. So he stepped in at the right moment, did it. And as soon as we said stop, they stopped. The kid didn't expect him to be able to take him down so easily. The kid was bigger than him. But, you know, he learned two things. He learned that all the training that we were making him do for so long paid off, and that he was comfortable. He wasn't scared. He was calm. He knew what to do. And two, that there's a certain level of power and responsibility he has having those abilities, that he knows, okay, that kid couldn't defend himself. This was a moment where I was supposed to do something. But I've also talked to him. I was like, look, if you see 15 kids, I was like, you don't need to be a hero.
Yeah.
I was like, call me, you call help, you do that. But it's like, you don't need to jump in, and you need to learn what situations are worth it and what situations aren't. I think most of the time, you know, you want to do the right thing, but sometimes, you know, just two people end up getting hurt instead of one. So the best thing to do is to go get help or do something like that. But, you know, there's everything is situational. I don't think there's one way to do it, but I think having the training and having the confidence and the competence to know what to do, I think is better than not. Because look, sometimes he's not going to do anything because it's not worth it, but not being able to do anything isn't an option.
Yeah.
You know, because if he doesn't know how to fight, if he doesn't know how to handle himself, then he doesn't have a choice anyway. Then he's just another victim. You know, so I told him that you know, it's better to have the skills and then you can decide whether or not you want to use them. But if you don't have the skills, then you don't really have a choice anyway. If that bully would have turned around and turned it on you, there's nothing you can do about it. But for him, he has that option. And I'm happy that he's been training this long and he's still training, and he'll start competing hopefully this year as well. But the little one's 4 too, you know, and he's super nice. He's like a lot sweeter. So I'm curious how he's gonna do in jiu-jitsu. You know, we'll see.
Yeah, my son's just about ready to start, and I've taken him to the gym with me and stuff, but he watches the UFC with me, and he started recently saying like, I want to hurt something. Like you'll say, hey, do this, and he's like, I'm gonna hurt this. He doesn't really understand what hurt means, and my wife's like, I think you got to explain to him that they're not really hurting each other. It's a sport, and try to explain these concepts to a 4-year-old and stuff. But I think every boy, the security they have to know they can handle themselves in a physical environment against another boy, I think it's such a priceless gift. And it's like, I really don't want to, I want to let him figure out the avenues of sports and interests that he wants to do, with the exception of you have to do jiu-jitsu as well, or a martial art as well, because I just think it's a superpower that he might only appreciate as he gets older. Even just with my business, real estate, so many, I've got so many doors that have opened through jiu-jitsu. Like it's benefited me from a physical perspective. It's benefited me from a social perspective with the friends and the people you meet. It's benefited my business through all the opportunities and doors that have opened. It's just, there's so much I've got from it. And, you know, I've been so lucky. I've been in martial arts since I was a teenager. So over 3 decades now. And it's just, it's such a gift. You want to give it to the people that you're close to. But at the same time, it's hard, Eddie, because I don't want to live vicariously through my kids. I do want them to find their own path too. So that becomes a bit of a balance. So I hope that he loves it.
Well, I learned this because, you know, I've been a coach for a long time, and in my head, I'm like, I'm such a good coach. I'm like, I can't wait till I coach my boys because they don't want to hear anything I have to say.
Yeah.
So I had to let go of my aspirations of being the coach. And luckily I have Cobrinhas close by. I have some of my other fighters. Leandro's also a very high level black belt. They're coaching because I can't coach them. I could be like, hey, this is really good. Do you want me to show you something? No. Okay. So, you know, rather than me get upset and ruin jiu-jitsu for them, they're having fun. They love it. I have guys that I trust that will teach for me. And I think that's the trick too. When it's your boys, you have to be open to them having other mentors that aren't you, because you have all this knowledge that you want to give them, but they don't want to listen to anything you have to say because you're dad. Does that make sense? And I see this. Look, I have fighters that I train that their dads are amazing coaches, like, you know, high level guys, but they're like, hey, listen, like, they're not listening to me now. Can you step in? And I'm like, you don't have to say, I completely know what you're saying. You could say the right things and they just don't want to hear it because you're saying it. And I can think back to my dad telling me things that were probably correct. I just didn't want to hear it from him. And then my coach would say the exact same thing. I'm like, you're right. That's awesome. It's great advice. And my dad's like, okay, you know, but as a dad, you have to let go of that that part of the ego that's like, I wanted to do it, you know, because you have these like aspirations of like, well, he's gonna be my little ninja.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, he still can be, but you can't be the one that tells him it all the time. As they get older, they're gonna run and ask for our advice. But right now, they're not gonna want to listen to half the stuff we say. So you have to trust good coaches to do the job for you. They're still gonna learn. Like they have to go to train, but I understand if they don't want to listen to what I have to say because they have to listen to me in other areas. So I'm like, okay, jujitsu, then you listen to them during this class, but you're going to listen and you're going to be respectful and it's yes or no, sir. But I understand if they don't want me to coach them because it's different. It's a different relationship we have with them. But yeah, training is not an option, but I'm okay with not having to coach, you know, because it's harder to do both, you know?
That is a great point. Thank you, Eddie.
Yeah.
How do you think you go about finding a really good coach? Because, like I said, even just talking to you right now, I wish I'd had you when I was boxing. I almost feel like the art matters less than the coach. Meaning, there's an incredible Olympic judo school that it was relatively close to the old place where I lived, and I moved. It's like way too far now. But I feel like if I lived there, I would love to take my son there because he's such a good coach. Even though I'm not really a judo guy, it's
Yeah.
the same with boxing.
The
Like, it's the teacher, exactly. Yeah. So how do you think you can? How do you find, like, if you're a parent and you want to get your kid into martial arts, how can you find a really good teacher?
For me, the first thing I look at is whether or not they focus on the why. So if you have someone telling you to do something, you're like, oh, okay, why do you want me to do it that way? And they're like, well, that's the way I was taught. Okay, that's not going to work for me. You know, if you tell me to slip and throw this punch, okay, why this punch? Was it well because your weight's on this side? Why turn it over this way? Well, because mechanically it makes more sense. There's more strength. And if they might not know it, they say, you know, that's a good question. I want to find out. Or I'm gonna figure out why. You know, like those are the guys you want, the ones that are constantly in the pursuit of learning and that have already done a lot of homework and why they're teaching what they're teaching. And I like guys to have a sort of philosophy or a code. Like if the word philosophy isn't even in their vocabulary, then I probably don't want them teaching me anything because they're just regurgitating a bunch of stuff or they're just trying to work you out.
Mm.
You know, you want somebody that's going to teach things, you know, have the fundamentals down, footwork, make them do the basics, make them do the boring stuff over and over and over. That's a good teacher. They're going to teach you from the ground up and they're going to make you do the things that other people don't want to do. Because a lot of guys just do what other people want. They're like, okay, just do mitts or just do this. Let's skip over all the basics. And then you want to really learn. And then when you get to the point where you start sparring, doing everything else, you don't have any of the fundamentals. So it's like building a house.
Yeah.
If you don't start from the ground up and you skip steps, it could look as pretty as it wants, but it's going to fall apart, right? You have to do all the, which I'm sure you've seen over time. You've seen that happen, right? You have to do all the groundwork correctly. Otherwise the house will collapse. So I look at guys that have a philosophy, that go over fundamentals, and that understand the why. They have to have a why in everything that they teach. If they can't explain the why, then I usually don't want to learn from them. It goes back to what we were saying. I forgot the quote from The Alchemist as well. It's no, sorry, it's Carl Jung. He said, beware of those who got things without earning them, right? It's like people that have knowledge that didn't earn it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you can regurgitate something that someone else said, but if you don't understand it, then it doesn't matter. If you can't explain it to me, and that's why with my students too, I make them teach from a young age. So the little guys, once they get to a certain age, they're teaching the new little guys and they're working together and they have to mentor each other so they can explain something. If I tell you how to do the jab and you learn it, that's awesome. If you can explain it to a kid, now you really know it. You really understand how to block this way or why to do this or why to move your feet or why this is important. And then you have it in your body and it's yours and no one can take that from you. You have the actual knowledge. You're not just doing movements that you've copied or seen. You actually understand them all. You know, jiu-jitsu is the same thing. It's like if you can't really teach it, you don't know it that well. You need to be able to teach it a little bit. Doesn't mean you have to be a jiu-jitsu teacher, but if you can't pass it on, then you don't really know it. So that's the main thing I look at.
That's so true. If I ever do a seminar the weekend, I teach a Wednesday class. I always teach as much as I can remember from the seminar Wednesday, and I feel like I got that. But whatever I can't remember on Wednesday, it's lost forever. You know, like I gotta remember it and teach it coherently, and then I can add it to my day. That's so awesome. Eddie, you mentioned something really cool. You said you saw your gym in your head, you know, before it happened. Can you talk a little bit? Like, I absolutely love that because I know there's people that criticize that by saying, well, visualizations, you know, you got to do the work. But I feel like if you really visualize it, you internalize it so much that you're just going to do all the pieces of the puzzle that you need to make it happen. So I couldn't agree more. I think visualizing is amazing. And obviously you're proof, you made your gym happen.
I did. And, it takes discipline because there's a lot of things that I wanted to happen that I didn't stay disciplined with it. You have to see it before it happens. And I think that, I believe that the more you visualize, the more you make it real in your mind, the opportunities to do the work appear. Because there's obviously just you can't just think about it all day. Think about it, and then an opportunity to do what you want creates itself. So Stephanie was one of my fighters. She's my business partner as well. She were friends, and I trained her. And I had this idea for a gym. I'd already printed out my thing. I had the website, I had everything in my head. I was just like, my goal is I don't know business that well. So I need somebody to partner with that's good at the other stuff, that loves boxing, that believes in what I'm trying to create, the community that I want to create. And I had been training Stephanie for a long time now. We're friends. And we went to lunch after training, and I was like, I have this idea. She's a CEO, she's super smart, and I was like, will you check out my website? And she's like, this is amazing. And I was like, yeah, so I want to do this gym. This is my idea. I show that. And she's like, this is really good. And I was like, thank you. I didn't think anything of it. And she calls me, the next day, and she's like, hey, do you want to have lunch with my husband, Nick, and I? And I was like, sure. I went to have lunch, and they're like, so we want to invest in your gym and we want to partner with you. And it was out of, I didn't plan it. It was just, I just told her as a friend, like, this is what I want to do. And they've been the best partners because they believe in what I'm doing, and they're good at the things that I wasn't good at. And Stephanie ended up going from doing one amateur fight for fun to winning the Golden Gloves and, competing this. Now she wanted to be a professional. She could, she's also constantly, in CEO positions and doing really, cool stuff business wise. But the opportunity to do the work came by me visualizing in my head exactly what I wanted, and even down to the partners that I wanted and the way I wanted the community to be, the type of athletes I wanted to create. I wanted the gym to be a combination of a traditional martial arts academy and the authenticity of a boxing gym, right? I like the grittiness of a boxing gym, but I don't like how disorganized they are. I don't like that there's not like a seniority, like respect thing like you have in a martial arts academy. They're usually dirty. I like that our gym is clean and accessible, and anyone can train there. There's a respect level with the coaches and everything else, but it's still authentic. And we have competitors, we have regular people, we have everything. So that would say kind of exactly what I wanted. And I just saw it so much in my mind that it kind of happened. But like you said, it doesn't just happen because I said it, because the work was there and I had to still do the work. But I made it real in my mind first. And I think you could do that with anything. Everything I've ever accomplished, I saw a million times before I had the opportunity to go get it.
I think that's what's so powerful is I've had 3 careers in my life, Eddie. I would say in finance when I was trading, fighting when I was fighting professionally for a bit after an amateur career, and then in real estate. And they're 3 completely different careers, but there's so much that I took from each of them that I use today. And just the idea of a simple that like Stephanie probably had is you train hard, you go into a tournament and you win. It's like that very simple correlation between better performance from harder work. And also, it's so funny. I haven't, it's been since my last MMA fight was 11 years ago, Eddie, and I haven't sparred. I felt like I've had so much head trauma up until then. I'm like, I'm just going to stick with jiu-jitsu and other stuff. But now, even just talking to you, I get all these beautiful memories that come back to me. And I think that I got the confidence to win the Golden Gloves, which wasn't really fair because there was a guy that won that was my training partner the year before. And then he got a bit out of shape. So he'd come in to spar, but he was one of those guys where it was, you had to go to war because he was going to try and take your head off. But he was a little bit out of shape. And then I was peaking just before the Golden Gloves. And I just kept dropping in with like liver shots and all that stuff. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it because he used to kill me back, a year or two before. I believe I was doing so well. So it gave me so much confidence. I was like, if I can do this to a champion. But what I didn't realize is he was a very out of weight, but yes, since he's wild, he's been partying and enjoying life. Yeah. But that's already gave me the confidence.
It worked. It gave you the confidence. Yeah.
But then I feel like I took that confidence at 26, and here 2 decades later, I still have that confidence where like you almost believe that you're a winner, and you can I have the confidence that I don't know how to do it, but I know that I'm going to figure it out and do it if I really put my mind to something. And that's just such a beautiful gift to give people. It's like, oh, I wish everyone could get exposed to martial arts. I think it'll be so much of a better world if they were.
Well, the thing is, it's not everything is honest as martial arts, right? In martial arts, if you do the work, you'll get results. In real life, sometimes you can do the work and someone can screw you over. You could do the work and there could be a pandemic. You could do the work and, the economy crashes. It's like there's a lot of things that are out of your control, which is why I love these sports so much, because it's one of the last places that it's fair. Like there's gonna be a winner, there's gonna loser. Even in boxing, look, there's robberies all the time, but you have the opportunity to knock somebody out. You have the opportunity to submit somebody. You have the opportunity to solidify yourself as the better person if you do the work. And there's not a lot of places in the world where you have the opportunity to be truly equal against someone else. And that's why I love it. And it teaches you that if you do the work, something's going to happen. Because even if, look, you don't get what you're looking for in real life right away, if you keep pushing, you will get there. And I do believe that now. I've seen so many people come from nothing to something. I've seen all my buddies like climb and fall and then climb again. Like you you just have to keep going, and you learn that perseverance from training, from putting yourself in hard positions and knowing, okay, this sucks, but I can get out of it. This sucks. I know I'm not good now, but I will get good. You start as a white belt, you get to your black belt, and then you get to black belt and you realize there's way better black belts, and you're like, okay, so what does that do? You kind of start over again. And that's what life is, right? You get to a certain level of success and you're like, oh man, and then you see, oh my God, there's these guys that are even higher than me. And it's like, that it doesn't stop, and you don't get complacent because there's always something to learn. Having that white belt mentality, I think, is so good. And you become a dad, then it's like, oh man, I got a lot to learn. I don't know everything. So then you want to learn more about that. You want to be the best of that. I think the pursuit of excellence that you learn from martial arts applies to everything if you choose to. Or you could be the person that makes excuses and blames everyone for all your problems, and makes excuses when you lose and be like, oh, it's because my shoulder, because of this. No, you lost. Move on. Do the next thing. Work around it. But I think it teaches you a lot about people. I always tell, jujitsu is a new golf. Back in the day, business, you learn about somebody in golf. My dad would say play golf with guys because it's like, see if he blames his clubs, see if he cheats, see if he throws a ball, see if he's honest about his score. You learn a lot about somebody. And martial arts, boxing, jujitsu, you learn a lot about guys. Are they going to do one round and then quit? Are they going to like make it excuse, get them a submission? Are they going to start coaching you and pretend like you didn't earn it? Are they going to, are they going to avoid doing an extra round? Like, you learn a lot about guys there. And I think that's why, any guy that does jujitsu, purple belt and up, I respect a lot, because it takes a certain level of commitment and discipline to get to that point. And not everyone can do it. A lot of people are not going to do that these days. So I respect the guys that train or that have boxed and done a fight, even if it's at the lowest level. Like, most people will never do that.
Yeah.
Putting yourself out there, like in real life, exposing yourself to the world with a chance that you can get embarrassed and get knocked out or get submitted or do whatever. Not everyone is willing to put themselves in that position. And I have a different level of respect for people that do. And it usually says a lot about them. It says that they're willing to do the work it takes to achieve a goal. And if you can do it in this sport, then you can do it in anything, I think.
That's beautiful. Eddie, as a coach, I have to ask you some coaching advice for myself. And I think a lot of people in my sphere will kind of be dealing with the same issue too. So I'm a big believer in martial arts as a vehicle for personal development. So personal growth. So for me, I love being a competitor. I felt like I was like there was two types of fighters, whether it was jiu-jitsu, boxing, MMA. There's the people that if they weren't fighting in a sanctioned event, they'd probably be fighting on the street because they're just natural fighters. And then there's people like St. Pierre that would always talk about how scared he was. There was a video I saw of him where he's putting on his suit to walk to the arena to compete. And he said, oh, I wish all the electric would go out so that the show would be canceled. I wouldn't have to fight on fight day. He just, but I feel like, I remember when I heard him say that, I'm like, wow, that's the champion of the world at my weight, 170. And he has exactly the same thoughts that I have, where, every day I'd wake up on fight day and be like, I don't have to do this. I'm not paying for my food. I have to put myself through this. Why do I do this? I would think that every single morning of my day, but there's just so much growth that you do from going through that. Now, here I am, I retired. I had my last jiu-jitsu match about a year ago, Eddie, and I'm just like, I'm retired. I've been doing this long enough and I've got enough aches and pains. But now I'm thinking, I'm really struggling because I do really miss the challenge of competing. But at the same time, I worry about, the strain I'm putting on my body and my joints. And I'm like, I want to don't want to jack my back up for when I'm 50 or 60, So I'm trying to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
get that balance out. So I guess I wanted to ask you as a coach, because you're such a philosopher, if you had any tips of wisdom for me, or just any kind of older athlete that's struggling with.
I currently have a torn ACL because at 41 I decided to go start competing again as well. So I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that question because I'm going to tell you you probably should if you have the ache. Look, what I love about jujitsu is we're not getting hit. Like, I don't plan ever to get punched in the head hard again. I'll spar with my friends and do stuff like that because I trust them. They're not trying to hurt me. Or if I'm coaching my guys, I'll move around and show them things. But like my days of sparring hard are done. But jujitsu is a way that we can push ourselves with guys you trust that aren't trying to hurt you. And we can get that same sort of like rumble out of our system because you can push yourself past exertion and try to beat somebody and submit if you need to and tap if you need to safely. I think, it doesn't mean we have to roll with 21-year-old, animals or, 40-year-olds on a bunch of TRT. We don't have to do that either. But if you have training partners that you trust, or if you want to do a master's tournament with another guy that's in the same position you are, I think that that's fine. I saw, I did Masters Worlds last year in Vegas and I got second. And what I was most impressed about was the 60-year-old guys that have been black belts for 30 years plus, and they're still out there competing because they love it, because it makes you happy. It's not even about winning at this stage. It's just, we're not dead yet. Who says you have to give up? Who says you have to stop because of this? I think that's a very dated mentality of like, we should stop this. We're not getting punched in the head. Our body falls apart when we stop moving it. Our body falls apart when we stop, tearing the tissues and rebuilding it, regenerating. Training hard helps your body stay young because you're constantly regenerating things. You look at Jackie Chan's like he's 80 now, right? He still trains like a machine. Chuck Norris still trains like a machine all the time. And he's in his mid 80s now. He looks great, but it's because he didn't stop that mindset. I think, we should keep training and compete to a certain point. Don't go compete with a young bull that's trying to kill you, but compete with guys the same age that are in the same pitch. We look out for each other. We keep ourselves sharp and active because look, at the end of the day, we're always going to be the protectors of our family. So if you're not keeping the water warm, then you need to turn it up at some point. You're not going to be able to because your body's not going to listen. So I always say, I was like, keep the blade sharp, keep the water warm, and at any time if you need them, they're there. Doesn't mean we have to push, training camp to 12 months a year, but we can be training consistently at least 1 or 2 days a week where we know if we need to go more than 5 minutes to defend our family, we can. It's like it's just good. It's good peace of mind. I think it's good for us mentally to always have that and constantly be competing a little bit because otherwise we're going to start competing in other areas that aren't healthy. So I think it's good to have that sort of healthy competition among your training partners or even to do these master programs. I think they're fun. The master tournaments are fun because there's guys in the same age bracket. We're not going against, a 30-year-old that's, super strong. We're going against another guy. And I think both of us are going to be very fit well into our 50s and 60s. I don't plan on slowing down anytime soon, but I think we should be training and doing that. Don't get punched in the head, but definitely let's do some jujitsu and compete that way. I think it's, especially at black belt, you know how to handle yourself. I think you should. It's good for you mentally because otherwise you're going to regret not doing it later. You're going to be better today than you will at 55.
Yeah.
So do it now while you can. And keeping yourself strong and fit will protect your back and protect all your other things. Just be selective who you train with. That's my long, short answer.
I absolutely love that. Thank you. You've inspired me. I've been wanting to make a comeback and I need to hear this idea. Bro, this is so much fun. I really hope time in California, I can coordinate with you and get a session and wish that you were my girl. To go.
Thanks, brother. I wish you lived closer. We could train. My knees. I hope my knee gets better soon too, because I miss my training. I don't spar hard anymore, so jujitsu is kind of like my time. My me time was to train jujitsu, and it's been like 3-4 months not being able to do anything. It's killing me. So I've just been coaching overtime just to like make up for it.
Oh, well, brother, I feel you. I have a friend that's gone through a bunch of those surgeries. I've had a lot of other issues, but my knees luckily been okay. But I feel you, brother. Hope it keeps getting better. And honestly, it's really amazing what you're doing. You're making such a difference in these kids' lives. And I obviously I don't know all of it, but I just see a little bit here and there of the stuff you're doing online, and it's really inspiring, Eddie. And you make the world a better place. So you should take a moment. I know you're not the type of guy to do this, but you should take a moment to really appreciate, yourself and the difference you're making, because it's beautiful to watch on the outside.
I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.